Book One was all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. A genuine passion for NBA hoops with the credentials, experience, and knowledge to match. A storyteller with the interview experience ranging from NBA coaches, players, and even company CEOs. None other than Mr. Uriah Young.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Welcome, Mr. Uriah on Book One Wonder View. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. I am Uriah Young. I am the founder and the executive producer for NBA Now and Then, The Greatest Comparisons. Our podcast has been downloaded in over 55 countries around the world. Essentially, what we do, Daniel, is we bridge NBA eras and we connect generations of NBA fans around the world through our comparisons. We compare players from different eras, and we do it in a way, Daniel, that is more enriching for the game as opposed to some of the toxic debates that happen online. So we just try to bring balance to the podcast sphere when it comes to talking NBA hoops.
Well, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Uriah. Thank you. Can you be my guest on my other podcast, Sports 101? And let's talk about more about this NBA now and then.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. But today, let's talk about how the NBA has evolved across years, comparing pace, physicality, spacing, and skill. So, tell us, you've dedicated significant work to understanding how the NBA has evolved across eras, from hand checking days to today's positionless positionless basketball. Why
Mhm.
does context matter so much when we try to compare players from different generations?
Well, I think what happens is when you're judging players today versus yesterday, you have to look at the idea that every era solves a different type of basketball problem. If you're keeping up with Amazon Prime, the subscription, a really popular docuseries has been published just the other day, and it's called Soul Power. And what they're doing is they're taking you back to the time of the ABA, who was competing with the NBA in the 1960s and 70s. And when it comes to judging greatness, judging players from different eras, you have to understand that each era solves a problem. And some of the problems in the 70s going into the 80s had to do with the style of play, it had to do with financial factors. And if you look at the style of play in the ABA, it was up and down the court, fast breaks, slam dunks, the introduction of the 3 point line. So if you compare players today like Steph Curry, if you compare players of today like Damian Lillard, really prolific 3 point shooters, and you compare them to players in the late 70s or early 80s, it's kind of unfair because that was not the main focus of basketball during that early era. So you have to put things into context. And you also have to look at the idea of the game back then, where it was more of a centers league. You would drop the ball down to the center or power forward, back to the basket, the defense collapses. It was more of an inside out game. Today, Lucas, it's more outside in. So to compare eras and to be overly judgmental of one over the other, I think is unfair, and it's something that you have to consider when you're a fan and just being part of the landscape of loving basketball.
Mr. Uriah, the NBA of the 1980s and the 1990s has been described as a street fight in sneakers, physical, deliberate, and territorial. For someone who didn't live or didn't see it through that era, what
Mhm.
is the single most misunderstood element of how the game was actually played back then?
Sure, that's a great question, Daniel. So you have to understand the physicality of the game. Today it's nowhere near what it was in the 90s or the 80s, where defensive rules favored um, players in today's era where there's no hand checking. If you're playing in the 80s or 90s, there was a lot more physical play allowed because that was the style of play back then. And I think what happened was is before David Stern passed away, he wanted to ensure that the game, or at least the league, would protect its star players. And what better way to do that than to change the rules so that it could be more favorable for players like a Steph Curry or a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So with no hand checking, that decreases the physicality and it actually allows the game to open up more and to be more fast paced, which is what fans ultimately wanted to see was more scoring. The irony, Daniel, is that now I think fans are kind of longing for that physical play and more defensive style to kind of balance out the game. So the physicality is definitely not as prevalent as it was, but it's still a physical game. Let's just keep it at that. It's not just allowing players to score in the paint. There is defense. It's just not as used as much as it was in the 80s and 70s.
Very well said, Mr. Uriah. You often hear debates about whether today's players could survive the physical or physicality of the 90s or whether past players could keep up with today's pace. Is this even the right question to ask? What are the more productive framework for understanding greatness across time?
I think what it comes down to now more than ever is player empowerment. And I think players are really protective of their brand, they're protective of their style. So they're probably less likely to and if you watch the All-Star game most recently last weekend, there are less players putting their bodies on the line when it comes to participating in things that could potentially injure them. For instance, the slam dunk contest. There were four players that were not household names, where in the 80s you had Dominique Wilkins, you had Michael Jordan, you had stars actually participating. When it comes to players today, and what they're willing to put themselves out to do in terms of competition. They're very reluctant to put themselves out there. Now, the All Star game was a bit more competitive this year, and I think that had a lot to do with Victor Wembanyama, who was, in my opinion, Lucas is going to be the future of the NBA. He's from France. He's an outstanding player. So when it comes to players today versus yesterday, it really comes down to what the players see themselves as far as not just winning, but their brand. And that brand can be something related to how they play, what they present through their product endorsements, and things of that nature. So players today are a little bit more protective of their brand as of, I'd say, maybe the 70s or 80s.
A brand indeed, for sure. In the 1990s, teams rarely exceed 100 possessions per game,
Hmm.
and the Detroit Pistons won titles averaging just 88 possessions. Today, teams average over 102 possessions and 115 plus points. Walk us through the actually change. What is the rule change or something deeper about the players were trained?
Well, it's not so much about training. I think it's about what style franchises are leaning towards in terms of pace. You mentioned pacing. There's, if you think about the modern NBA, there's more possession simply because players are shooting faster. Back in the day, you rarely saw a player pull up for a 3-point shot in transition with 14 seconds left on the shot clock. Now, there could be a fast break, and with 20 seconds on the shot clock, the NBA players are now shooting more and they're shooting often because a lot of plays today, when it comes to play calling and coaching, it's about analytics. And analytics are driving teams to try and score faster because they want to have more possessions. More possessions means more points. You've seen a huge rise in statistics for individual players this season If you looked at the league leaders of scoring just 10, 15 years ago, you might have had, I don't know, 10 players average above or close to 30 points a game. Now you might have 20 to 30 NBA players averaging between 25 and 35 points a game. So I think pacing has definitely kind of driven the league towards faster style of play and shooting, and then spacing. Okay, when you have a big man like Patrick Ewing, David Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal, they're going to eat that shot clock up because they want to score close to the basket. They have to position themselves close to the basket, and that takes time. Today, you don't have a lot of players posting up besides, say, a Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid. So those are things to consider when it comes to pacing and spacing.
Very well said, Mr. Uriah. Grant Hill recently explained how the 2004 handshake ban, the reduced backcourt violation, and the legalization of zone defense all converged to create conditions for Mike D. and Anthony's sons.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Mike D'Antoni coached the Phoenix Suns, famously having Steve Nash as their point guard. And that offense was basically pushing the pace of the NBA for the Phoenix Suns, at least, to score in 7 seconds or less. And then Mike D'Antoni went from Phoenix to the Houston Rockets, where, if you know the NBA, the ultimate offensive juggernaut in James Harden adapted that same style of play with D'Antonio in Houston. They almost actually went to the championship had it not been for a hamstring injury to Chris Paul. But when it comes to Mike D'Antonio and D'Antoni and that style of play, it worked for Phoenix. They made several deep runs in the playoffs in the Western Conference. Ultimately, didn't win a title, but to your point, I think Mike D'Antonio had a huge impact on the league in terms of style of play and where we are today in the NBA.
Well, very well said. And thank you for that, Mr. Uriah. The Malice and the Palace happened in
Ooh,
2004. The
yes.
same year hand checking was banned. Is it coincidence that the league moved away from the physicality at the exact moment they were trying to clean up the sports image?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if there's a correlation between that hand check rule and what happened on that fateful night uh, in Detroit. What I can say is that I watched it transpire live, and it
Mhm.
was completely unbelievable. There's some great documentaries out where you can watch the behind the scenes and the aftermath of that incident. I do know that it was a stain on the NBA simply because you had fans get involved, you had fans get injured by players, and I think as a result of that, the NBA did boost their security at the arenas, and rightfully so, because
Mhm.
the paying customers and those seats down by the court are not cheap. You don't want to alienate your fan base. Therefore, the NBA had to make certain adjustments to ensure that not only did the game present itself as still a quality product to view, but also safe, not just for the fans, but for the players, because the players did feel threatened. You had someone throw beer on Ron Artest, formerly Ron Artest, but Meta World Peace, and that sent him over the edge. Now, everything that happened after that is inexcusable, but that I think that moment in NBA history is would like to be forgotten by the league, but it's something that can be a learning lesson for both fans and players.
A learning lesson indeed. You've studied how physicality
Mhm.
manifested different across areas. In the 1960s, Jerry West had his nose broken 9 times driving the rim. By the 1990s, it was handshake and body blows in the half court. Today, it's about navigating screens and avoiding flagrants. What is being lost and what has been gained?
Hmm. what has been lost and what has been gained pertaining to give me a little bit more context here in terms of play
In
style or
Yeah, in its iteration of physicality.
oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Well, when you look at Jerry West in that time period, 60s and 70s, you had players who maybe did not take the game as seriously. There were players who would smoke cigarettes or drink beer at halftime during the games. So when it comes to what's been gained as of today, I would say a more professional approach to how players prepare for the game. They take care of their bodies a lot better in terms of nutrition, in terms of stretching, and things that technology affords players today. What I think is lost, I think, is when it comes to the NBA players today, is maybe some of that drive to want to play as many games as possible. Unfortunately, there are a lot of players who take on a load management approach to conserve their bodies for, let's say, the playoffs. Some teams would deny it. Some teams were open about it. I think the San Antonio Spurs had no problems resting their players. As a result, you could probably say they won a few championships as a result of load management. But I think what's lost today, Daniel, is you see fans pay good money to watch players, but because of load management or because there's so many injuries nowadays, I think that's missing. Where in Michael Jordan's era, Charles Barkley, those guys would try and play every game. I think that's what's missing today, and I think fans are longing for that to come back.
Very well said. Very well said, Mr. Uriah. So, as a podcast host, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Well, my short term goals are to have my podcast continue to grow and to continue to build community so that we can, as I said earlier, when we first started talking, to create a balance when it comes to NBA fandom. Everybody has an opinion, Daniel, and everyone has a right to express their frustration with their team, their coach, their franchise, the ownership. But at the same time, my ultimate goal is to enrich the basketball community, to help fans understand that you can compare players, past and present, guards, forwards, centers. You can do it in a way where you can uplift your guy, but not put down another guy. I think that's what's missing in sports today, and especially the NBA, because the NBA is the ultimate sport when it comes to comparing players from different eras. As far as short term, I'm hoping that we can align ourselves with another platform that will allow us to reach more audiences. We have been downloaded in 55 different nations, our podcast. We're on Spotify, we're on pretty much any podcast platform. But long term, the goal is to leave a positive impact and to ensure that the NBA game itself is preserved. I see ourselves, Daniel, my team, Lucas, Maurice, and Ben. We are custodians of the game. We don't know more than the players, but what we do is we offer facts about the players to help connect generations of fans, fathers and sons, neighbors. These are the things that bond us as sports fans, is to create those memories and to appreciate the game that we fell in love with, and we do that with our comparisons.
Good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success for the podcast itself, Mr. Uriah. And what would be a piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a podcast host like us?
Wow, if you want to be a podcast host, I think you have to establish yourself as a solid communicator, someone who is willing to express themselves in the best way possible so that you can connect with your audience. And I think the most important thing, Daniel, is to be authentic. If you're not a
Mm.
rah rah, gregarious, out there type of person, then don't try to fake it. Okay. I mean, you could try, but usually listeners will see right through that. So if you are authentic podcast host, you are a good communicator who's always trying to improve the way you convey yourself in front of your audience, that should be something that you should strive towards if you're looking towards getting into the podcasting industry.
Definitely. And thank you for that empowering advice. Truly, truly empowering.
Yeah.
And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yes, absolutely. So hopefully next time I'm on your show, Daniel, I'll have a book published. but but
Looking
until that
forward to
time,
that.
yeah, yeah. But until that time, I read a book when I was in my early 20s and it sold, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 million copies worldwide. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by
Hmm.
Stephen Covey. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes.
Uh, just the best way I can describe it is there is a diagram that he put in the book of an hourglass. And I distinctly remember reading it and understanding it. It just makes all the sense in the world. So, of the 7 habits that he has, the bottom part of the hourglass is dependence. So, if you're starting out in any industry, whether you're starting out in college, everyone starts out dependent on something. If you apply the first 3 habits in the book, then you'll come out of dependence and you'll reach what's called independence, where you can stand on your own. Once you apply the next 3 habits, then you'll elevate yourself to the ultimate level, which is interdependence, where people can rely on you and people can look to you for leadership. So that book has had a tremendous impact on my leadership style, on my life. And if anybody's listening, I highly recommend check that book out, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes, people, highly recommended. And Mr. Uriah, thank you so much for the recommended book. When a former player say things like, "We were the Lakers' baby sisters," or "Today players would not survive," what do you think they're really protecting? Is this about the game itself, or is it about their place in history?
Um, all right. So when players say that, are they saying that out of their own opinion of themselves, or you're saying are they do they have another ulterior motive? What do you mean?
Is it a defense mechanism for them that, oh, without them they're nothing? So what do you think? Is it they're claiming that they are part of the history, or
Mhm.
something else, or they bragging?
Look, I can't speak for another man who played the game at the highest level that neither of us played. What I can say is that it does come across as a little bit distasteful. And sometimes people can frame that those comments of negativity towards the newer generation as maybe jealous. I don't know, maybe the contracts now where they're signing for 40, $50 million a year maybe rub some of the older players the wrong way. I don't know. And then you have the younger players being defensive where they go to make a super team and then they blame the older generation because they put them in a position to say, well, you guys tell us it's all about a championship. Okay, I go play with Steph Curry, and I'm talking about Kevin Durant, because the pressure to win is tremendous on the young player. So both sides are guilty, I think, of being overly sensitive or defensive to defend their era. When at the end of the day, it's a sport. Like who cares what the fans think? I mean, we're here just for the ride. But if you're going to be the torchbearer of this amazing sport known as basketball, where you had Wilt Chamberlain and you had Bill Russell, Jerry West that you mentioned. Like those guys laid the foundation so that these players could earn 40, $50 million a year. And I think to bicker back and forth and to throw shade constantly, it's just a bad look on the game. And as a podcast host for NBA Now and Then, I'm just like, look, we can appreciate the game without putting each other down.
Mm. So the MVP Awards has gone internationally for 7 straight years.
Mm.
Giannis Jokic or Embiid as SGA, and five of the current MVP favorites are foreign born. How has the globalizations of talent changed not just who plays, but how the game is played?
That's a great question. All those players are great players, and they all deserve the MVP award,
Hmm.
respectively. I think the gift and the curse, right? 1992, you had the Dream Team playing the Olympics. Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Chris Mullin, Clyde Drexler. I mean, you know the players. And I think that opened the floodgates for the popularity of basketball to explode. So if
Mm.
you look at the globalization of the game, as you said, it is apparent and it is a direct result of that 1992 Dream Team that, by design, I believe David Stern had that in mind to grow the game. And now Adam Silver is trying to take it to the next level where there's flirtations of the idea of the NBA having teams overseas. As far as the effect of or the style of play in Europe, from my understanding, basketball is as popular as ever. If you watch any games in Slovenia or Latvia or Greece, I mean, name any European team, France, it is so popular that they have caught up to American style or American born players. Some players get upset about that. I think Paul Pierce, it was on his own show, upset that you have so many European players, or maybe it was Gilbert Arenas, I can't remember. And look, this is the gift and the curse. The NBA is a wonderful sport. Basketball is the most universally played sport outside of soccer or football. So you can't have it both ways. You can't grow the game and make all this money, but then get mad at another continent for popularizing a sport and then coming over to the NBA and winning MVP awards. You can't have it both ways. At the end of the day, the cream will rise to the top. As an NBA fan, I don't care if you're from Antarctica. If you can put the ball in the hole and entertain the masses, you deserve to be exalted and you deserve to make the money that you earn.
Certainly. John Stockton recently argued that LeBron's championship pursuit devalued his legacy compared to Jordan's, suggesting that building through loyalty is more authentic than assembling super teams. Setting aside the hot take, what does the critic reveal about how differently we evaluate greatness when the structural conditions change?
Hmm. You said John Stockton made that comment?
Mhm.
Wow, I didn't hear that, but I'm not surprised. Well, look at John Stockton. He played for the same franchise his entire career. We're talking, I think he played over 20 years with Utah. I think LeBron James. Here's how I see LeBron James leaving Cleveland in 2010. I view it as he went straight from high school to play in the same state where he grew up, which is Cleveland. When he decided to leave, I believe he did the best that he could with what he had in Cleveland, took them to the finals in 2007. And when it came time for him to spread his wings and do what every other high school player did when they had an opportunity to go out and play in a different area, a different state, he never had that opportunity. So for me, he was able to do what other kids did, and it's his college jump. It's if for lack of a better term. Plus, and I've never been to Cleveland, but if I had a choice to play or live in Cleveland, cold Cleveland, or sunny, warm Miami, I'd probably want to play in Miami. That's just me.
Definitely, Miami, indeed, where the sun is always rising.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Uriah, to wrap up our discussion for today, you spent years helping people understand basketball contextuality. If you could design a thought experiment that would help fans watch across eras with more nuance, seeing the 90s through 2020's eyes and vice versa, what would the experiment look like? What the question we ask ourselves before declaring any player, any player that greatest or the greatest itself.
An experiment that would help us compare players for
Yes, in
greatness.
greatness.
Hmm.
How you define greatness in short
Okay.
for the 90s until now?
That's a great question, Daniel. Defining greatness, I
Thank you.
believe, I think it has to do with leaving the game better than it was before you stepped on the floor as an NBA player. Now, that doesn't have to equate to championships. It definitely does not mean scoring titles. I ultimately believe it has to do with how you approach the game and playing every game like your last. If you look at Allen Iverson, he never won a title, but
Hmm.
he's remembered as a player who gave everything he could, even though he didn't practice much. But I think it has to do with your legacy of leaving the game as better, as good as it was when you first became a player, in my opinion. So again, it's not about stats, it's not about championships. It's about giving your best for your fans, for your franchise, and ultimately for the game itself.
Certainly. Very well said, Mr. Uriah. So, can you please invite the listeners to support your podcast, your advocacy, or whatever project that you're doing right now?
Sure. So NBA Now and Then, the greatest comparisons. We are on every podcast platform. You can visit our website, nbanowandthen.com. We recently became an affiliate with the NBA store where you can purchase NBA paraphernalia, hats, jerseys, shorts. I mean, you name it. Those links for our affiliate for the NBA store will be found on our website as well as our social media description handles. And yeah, check us out, support us. We're trying to build a community. We are on Patreon. So if you would like to be part of that community of cerebral NBA fans who are really passionate about the game we grew up loving, that would be great. And I'll leave you with one last thing, Daniel. So ultimately, what we do is we try to bridge generations. If you're a father and you're trying to introduce your son to the game of basketball, listen to one of our shows because, for instance, we just compared Grant Hill to Cade Cunningham.
Hmm.
If you grew up in Detroit and you love watching Grant Hill and your son is starting to be aware of the NBA, maybe he's a fan of Cade Cunningham. If those two listen to our episode together, we're creating a bond that will help create memories for them and ultimately enrich the game of basketball, one family at a time, one city at a time, until it reaches a global reach.
Well, good luck for that global reach, Mr. Uriah, and looking forward for more success. Please do come over to Sports 101 and let's talk about those comparison and let's make a big buzz for your NBA now and then. So, Mr. Uriah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Take care.
Body people, see you soon.